He was a good dad. He didn't deserve what happened to him.
He'd been shot 8 times. One of his shoes had actually come off of him when he fell on the stairs. There was blood everywhere, and he was actually still alive.
They hunted him down like an animal, and they really wanted him dead.
They were heartless. It's like they didn't even care.
He wanted to retaliate back on my brother when he saw him again, and that's what happened. The young man wanted to get some payback.
June 11th, 2016, Atlanta, Georgia. At 3:17 a.m., DeKalb County Police and paramedics respond to a shooting at an apartment complex known as the Hamps.
Atlanta is, like a lot of big cities, violent. That's just the facts. In this particular community, that was even more intense because it's a lower income community, and violence, gangs, drug dealing were a part of daily life.
When they arrived, they found a man who had been shot approximately 8 times and was barely still alive. There was blood everywhere.
Authorities need to protect the crime scene.
You're going to have witnesses or just bystanders coming out of the woodwork to stand around. So the police had to secure the area and keep people from coming in and disturbing evidence.
As first responders rushed the victim to the hospital, police tried to identify him. Luckily, some of the bystanders recognized the victim from the neighborhood.
The victim was identified as Timothy Hobbs.
Timothy Hobbs was born in 1978 in a small town near Atlanta.
We grew up in Monticello, Georgia, a little country town. Everybody knows everybody.
Life in rural Georgia was peaceful and taught Timothy the importance of family.
Timothy was goofy, silly, fun to be around. Everything that a little sister can want in a big brother. We loved each other, and we were close, very close.
It's like a gentle, big teddy bear, you know, real kind-hearted, very protective of his family.
He was a good person. I mean, he would give you the shirt off of his back.
Timothy wanted nothing more than to have a family of his own, and he got a chance in his late 20s when he moved to Atlanta and met a single mother named Rhonda.
When Timothy met Rhonda, he fell deeply in love.
Rhonda had a daughter from a previous relationship, and it wasn't a problem for Timothy because he treated her like it was his own. For someone who couldn't wait to be a dad, it was the perfect situation. He was able to step in and be there for that little girl.
Then in 2008, Timothy and Rhonda added a child of their own.
Timothy was an amazing father. He loved his little girl. He absolutely adored her. Everything that he did was for his little girl. Everything. In every way. I mean, if she calls and say, "Daddy, I need this," or "Daddy, can you come?" He was there. Every time. No hesitation. That was his baby.
See, every time I talked to him, he was always talking about his daughter. He did anything he could to be there for her, and whatever, it was birthdays or whatever, he was always making sure she had the best party and everybody showed up.
That was what he was known for. That was how he was received by everyone that knew him as a proud father.
But as dedicated as they were to their children, Timothy and Rhonda's relationship had its ups and downs. For several years, they decided to live under separate roofs. Rhonda and the girls stayed in an apartment in the Hams, while Timothy lived with family members.
He took care of my grandmother and my grandfather. He was staying with them, and he was making sure they was all right.
Whatever he could do or whatever they needed, he was there to help take care of them. Doctor's appointment, cutting grass, cooking, everything he could do, he done it.
Not only was he a father, but he also took care of his grandparents. So he really operated intergenerationally, trying to take care of people in his life that he loved.
When Timothy wasn't spending time with his daughters, he worked countless hours to provide for them.
He worked hard for a living. He worked both in manufacturing as well as in setting up concerts.
Timothy worked in production, helped setting up shows and different things for people had different venues they were doing it, and he worked helping set up things and stuff like that.
Timothy, he loved what he did in production. He had a passion for it. He was very passionate about what he did, and he did it well.
Then in 2016, 8 years after Timothy and Rhonda's daughter was born, they decided it was time to make a permanent commitment to their relationship.
Mr. Hobbs was engaged to the mother of his child, and he was in love and took care of them, nurtured them, had a loving relationship with them, and they intended on getting married.
Timothy, he was trying to do the right thing for his little girl. He wanted to be with the mother of his child. He wanted to be one happy family. He just wanted to be under the same roof as his little girl. Want to be there with her at all times.
But now those plans are in jeopardy. Timothy has been found shot several times, and his loved ones are just waking up to hear the news.
I got a call from my oldest brother. I was getting ready to go to work, so it was probably about 4, 5 o'clock in the morning. He told me that my brother had been shot. So me and my mom got up and went to Atlanta and met my brother there.
They were operating on him at the time, but we couldn't see him. My thoughts were always, maybe he just got shot in the arm or something. Didn't know how serious it was. We just waited. A few other family members came in, just praying and believing that everything would be okay.
As the family prays for Timothy's recovery, police begin searching the crime scene for clues.
It was a gruesome scene. There were bullet casings everywhere. There was blood down the stairwell. There was a shoe that seemed as if it belonged to Timothy Hobbs.
The shell casings recovered were .40 caliber shell casings. It's not that distinctive. It's fairly common.
Given the location of the body and the shell casings, investigators believe the shooter fired at Timothy from the bottom of the stairs while he was walking up.
This was a man that was shot in the back 8 times. Someone wanted him dead. Someone intended to kill him.
While surgeons at Atlanta's Grady Memorial Hospital operate on 37-year-old Timothy Hobbs, DeKalb County investigators try to determine who shot him and why. It does not appear that he lives in the apartment building where he was found, known as the Hams.
But he didn't have keys to an apartment in that building.
Though the neighbors recognize him, none seem willing to cooperate with police.
In a lot of communities and in a lot of apartment complexes, people are reluctant to talk because they live there and they don't want any retribution. And in this case, it was very much the same.
A lot of people didn't want to get into it. So you know how it is. I saw something, but I'm gonna close my eyes because it's not my business or whatnot.
Most apartment buildings have security cameras. So the first thing they want to do is look at the tapes.
The building's management can't retrieve the footage over the weekend, so detectives will have to wait to review the recordings. They head to the hospital to check on Timothy and his family, where terrible news awaits.
I knew something was going on when they came in and they took their hats off. Normally when you see stuff on TV, they're about to deliver some news that you don't want to hear.
While Mr. Hobbs was at the hospital, he actually redlined once, and the doctors were able to bring him back. But there was too much damage, too much blood loss, and he finally passed away.
I just screamed. 'Cause that was my big brother. Someone had taken away from me. That's all I could do. I couldn't do nothing but scream. My brother was gone. And for what reason, I don't know. I just knew he was gone. And wasn't coming back. I was hurt.
Like, that was my little brother. You know, I'm big brother, so, you know, I always tried to protect my brother. But I couldn't protect him that night. And, you know, that always bothered me.
Despite their grief, Timothy's loved ones want to help in the investigation. They tell police he stays in the apartment building across the street with his fiancée, Rhonda. And they say he recently got into a fight in the neighborhood.
My brother, we had a conversation about 2 weeks before he passed, and he mentioned to me that he got into the altercation with someone, and he told me he got the best of him. You know, I don't know what brought on the altercation or whatnot personally, but I'm assuming that because my brother said he got the best of him, that the young man wanted to get some payback.
The family explains that Rhonda thinks the other man is responsible for Timothy's death, and she knows his first name, Derrick.
I've never heard the name Derrick until after this happened. So only information I got is that he was the one that shot my brother.
I didn't know him. I mean, my brother never talked about him.
But when investigators go to the apartment to talk to Rhonda, she isn't there.
That strikes police as a little strange. She's not at home, and she's not at the hospital. She could be laying low with the kids, but to an investigator, it's a red flag.
On Monday, June 13th, investigators meet with the apartment manager, who provides the surveillance footage from the night Timothy was shot. They quickly find what they're looking for.
There was a video of an individual who approached Mr. Hobbs prior to Mr. Hobbs being shot to death.
On the surveillance video, I saw my brother going across the parking lot, walking to another apartment, and then shortly after you see another guy walking.
On the video, you can see the guy is holding something in his hand as he goes inside the stairwell.
It looked as if you could actually see the gun in his hand.
He hid behind the back of an apartment by a stairwell until my brother came out of the apartment.
Then, a series of gunshots ring out. Timothy calls out for help, and he yells a name. The shooter doesn't appear on camera again, But after the last shots are fired, a third man runs across the parking lot and into the stairwell.
Hey! Hey! What up, man? Here, God!
You can tell from the emotion in this guy's voice that he knows Timothy.
Here! Oh, man! What up, man?
He's in shock and he doesn't know what to do.
Here, now! You can stop!
It's not clear who the third man is, but based on the video evidence, the building manager is able to identify exactly who the shooter is.
The individual who is seen walking in the area where Mr. Hobbs was shot had a very distinct walk, described by some as kind of hunched over, kind of pigeon-toed. That person is identified as Derrick Thurman.
It's the same name they got from Timothy's family. So they want to know everything they can about this guy.
The manager tells police Derrick is a 25-year-old man who lives in the Hams.
He had quite the reputation for fighting and being confrontational.
The manager also says Derrick was involved in another incident at the complex 3 months earlier.
We became aware that Mr. Thurman was shot during a shootout.
Two days after Timothy Hobbs was shot to death at an apartment building in East Atlanta, investigators have a suspect, 25-year-old Derrick Thurman. And according to the property manager, it isn't the first time Derrick has been involved in a shooting.
On March 13, 2016, Mr. Thurman was involved in an altercation. Shots were fired.
Derrick was outside in the complex when a shootout broke out. He was hit multiple times in his leg and in his stomach.
He was wounded and other people were wounded as well. It's that level of violence where someone could be attacked, violently attacked during the day, in broad daylight.
Derrick's injuries were so bad that he spent over a month in the hospital, and eventually they put a colostomy bag in.
In addition to the colostomy bag, the damage to his leg gave him a distinct limp.
Word on the street was that Derrick has been looking for revenge ever since.
At this point, Derrick has a colostomy bag, and not only is he bitter, he is angry at this person who shot him. He was big mad. Somebody had to pay.
Investigators go to Derrick's apartment to question him, but he's not there. The next day, however, they do catch up with Timothy's fiancée, Rhonda.
She shows up at the apartment after a couple of days with their girls. Right away, it's clear that she didn't have anything to do with Timothy's death.
Rhonda tells police Timothy left the apartment around 12:30 a.m. the night of the shooting.
Timothy had a couple of friends in the complex that he hung out with, and that's what he told Rhonda he was doing when he went out.
She isn't sure which friend it was, but says it might have been a man named Chenard, who actually lives in a nearby building in the Hams.
That name immediately rings a bell, because they heard that name on a security video. Chenard's apartment is near the stairs where Timothy was shot. Rhonda says there's talk in the building that Timothy was visiting Chenard when the shooting happened.
Rhonda says there was definitely bad blood between Timothy and Derrick.
Mr. Thurman was actually dating or seeing Rhonda's younger sister. When the police spoke with Mr. Hobbs' fiancée, they learned that Mr. Hobbs and Mr. Thurman had actually had an altercation just weeks earlier.
Mr. Thurman attacked him along with some other men and beat him to the point that he was bleeding.
Timothy held his own, and he won that fight.
Based on the timing, this is probably the same fight that Timothy told his brother about.
Rhonda can't remember why they were fighting, but according to her, Timothy couldn't have been the person who shot Derrick.
Mr. Hobbs didn't own a gun, wasn't involved in any violent acts, wasn't involved in any kind of gang or drug activity, was a working man and a father.
The only reason he was at those apartments was because his daughter was there. But even though the apartments were bad, many times I was with my brother, he never had a weapon or anything that he felt he needed to protect himself with. It wasn't the person to go around starting anything.
The family and everyone associated with the family, they don't believe at all that he had anything to do with Mr. Thurman being shot. In fact, when Mr. Thurman was shot, Mr. Hobbs wasn't even out at the Hamps during that time.
When investigators show Rhonda the security footage, she's able to give them another key piece of information: the name of the third man captured on video.
This is the guy that runs in after the last shot is fired to try to help Timothy. According to Rhonda, this is one of his good friends, Big John. So that's a great lead, because if anyone saw where Derrick ran off to, it's probably him.
Here! How did you go? Here!
After speaking to Timothy Hobbs' fiancée, Rhonda, detectives have another lead to follow. A man known as Big John, who came to Timothy's aid after the shooting.
Here, go ahead! Here!
So police are talking to Big John, and he tells him that he and Timothy were hanging out like they usually do on the weekends.
So about 3 a.m., Mr. Hobbs decides he wants a beer before he turns in for the night. So not having any, like a lot of these neighborhoods, they have the local bootlegger, or what we used to call a candy man, person that sells and anything you want. So he goes to the bootlegger to get his beer.
Big John says Timothy was only gone for a few minutes when he heard the gunshots.
He immediately runs over there without a second thought. But by the time he gets to Timothy, the shooter is already gone. He calls for help and tries to keep Timothy awake until police get there. He can tell from all the blood that his friend is in seriously bad shape.
He doesn't know if the gunman was Derrick Thurman, but says Timothy did mention running into him earlier that day.
Timothy told Big John that he walked past Derrick at the complex, and he was mean-mugging him. That means Derrick was already at the scene. So the question is, what happened between those two? The next person that the investigators want to talk to is the bootlegger. He is probably the last person to see Timothy before the shooting.
When police get the name of the bootlegger, another piece of the puzzle falls into place.
It's Chenard, the last guy Timothy called out to on the surveillance recording. So why is he just calling for help? Does he think Chenard set him up?
When police find Chenard, he agrees to tell them what he knows.
He seemed anxious to clear his name, but he also didn't want to be seen talking to cops. He immediately said he had nothing to do with Timothy's death.
According to Chenard, Timothy knocked on his door around 3:15 a.m.
He remembers selling him the beer, a six-pack, him leaving, and shortly thereafter, hearing shots.
He has no idea who's doing the shooting or who's being shot. His first instinct is to go and lock his door. Then he hears Timothy calling his name.
He comes out, he looks down, and he can see Mr. Hobbs sprawled out on the stairs, but he was breathing. He was alive. And so he called 911.
Unfortunately, Chenard says he didn't see who the shooter was either, but he must have been hiding in the stairwell, waiting for Timothy to come out.
Whoever shot Timothy was obviously lurking in the shadows. They were plotting and planning. They hunted him down like an animal, and they really wanted him dead.
Even without an eyewitness, Derrick Thurman appears to be the only suspect. And his motive is confirmed once detectives find the report about his own shooting in March.
They'd investigated the shooting of Mr. Thurman about several months before Mr. Hobbs' death. And this detective says that Mr. Hobbs' name came up as a potential suspect.
And the anonymous tip must have made its way back to Derrick.
I think he had to have thought that Hobbs either was the one that shot him or he had something to do with it. So he's had all this time to think about payback.
But detectives completely refute any notion that he was involved in shooting Mr. Thurman before that or anyone else.
But Timothy's name isn't the only thing in the report about the earlier shootout that catches their attention.
The report lists two different casings, a .380 and .40 caliber handgun. The .380 was used to shoot Derrick. The .40 was used to shoot back.
That was significant as well, that the connection during the shootout where Mr. Thurman was shot and the actual shooting of Mr. Hobbs was that these .40 caliber shell casings were found at both crime scenes.
So they get the crime lab to rush the analysis on both sets of the bullets. Because if they match, they know that Derrick's gun was the one that killed Timothy.
Atlanta police are looking for 25-year-old Derrick Thurman, suspected of murdering Timothy Hobbs in retaliation for an earlier shooting police don't think Timothy was responsible for. As detectives canvass the neighborhood for leads, they come across an associate of Derrick's named Andre.
Andre doesn't want to say anything to police, especially not about Derrick, but they eventually get him to talk.
He was out with Derrick Thurman that night, those early morning hours of June the 11th in 2016.
Mr. Thurman was known to hang out in the breezeway all day, all night, drinking, as he did the night of the homicide.
At the same time, Timothy was on his beer run to Chenard's. Andre says at one point Derrick told him, "I'll be right back." And as he walked away, Andre heard him mutter something under his breath.
He said, "There's that mother."
Andre didn't know who Derrick was talking about, but under the circumstances, it seems pretty likely he spotted Timothy.
Andre says after Derrick left, he decided to head back to his apartment.
And shortly thereafter, gunshots are heard. That is significant circumstantial evidence that Mr. Thurman is going after Mr. Hobbs.
Mr. Thurman was known to carry a .40 caliber pistol with him in the neighborhood. Matter of fact, the night of the homicide, Mr. Thurman had a .40 caliber pistol.
Andre claims he doesn't know anything about the shooting, but when investigators press him, he admits Derrick had it out for Timothy. And Andre knows more about the earlier altercation between the two.
The story goes that Timothy bought some drugs from a man named Little Ham, and someone stole those drugs from Timothy. He thought it was Little Ham running some sort of hustle, and he confronted him. So Derrick was friends with this guy, Little Ham, and didn't like that. So Derrick confronted Timothy.
Not long after that fight, Derrick got shot.
At this point, Derrick has a colostomy bag. He is angry. He wants to seek payback for whoever did this to him.
Jump to the night of the shooting. He's out drinking with his buddy and sees Timothy walking into that stairwell alone. He's never gonna get a better shot.
When investigators get the results of the ballistics tests on the casings from the shootout where Derrick was injured and those from Timothy's murder, their theory is confirmed.
Those shell casings, crime lab has put those together, and those shell casings match, meaning they came from the same weapon.
It looked like a clear-cut revenge killing, but the tragic thing is, he probably got the wrong guy. It was never any proof that Timothy was the one who shot Derrick.
Mr. Hobbs' family is really clear that he was not involved in any violence. He didn't have any history of violence. The night that he was shot, he didn't have a gun on him.
Investigators now have enough evidence to arrest Derrick Thurman. There's only one problem. They still can't find him.
He was doing his very best to elude capture. So detectives, fugitive squads are looking for Mr. Thurman. They're looking for months.
So it was encouraging to know that they still looking for the guy, but no one knew where he was.
The more time that goes by, the more chance that they have to hide, the further away they can get from you, the more the time they have to cover their tracks.
It was just me waiting on the date for somebody to call and said they got somebody. I mean, months just passing by, not knowing where he was or if he was coming after us. I mean, it was scary because we didn't know what his next move was gonna be. We didn't know. It was just scary.
It was a living hell for the family because they didn't know what he was going to do. They did not want anyone coming to try to take them out because of their relationship to Mr. Hobbs. And so it was just a time of fear.
Then on November 16th, 5 months after Timothy's murder, Derrick finally turns up.
The police eventually catch up with Derrick, who is in North Dakota. He had gotten there by a Greyhound bus, which takes approximately 24 hours from Atlanta to North Dakota.
He apparently went to a hospital in Bismarck, and while he was there, he dropped his ID card. When it was found, police ran his name and discovered he was wanted for murder. They were able to find the address where he was staying and arrested him without incident.
Derrick informed the police that he was not on the run. He was there to seek medical attention for his colostomy bag. I don't know about you, but I don't know of anyone who would ride on a Greyhound bus to seek medical attention.
On December 2nd, Derrick Thurman is extradited back to DeKalb County to face trial.
You would think the case would be open and shut, but most of what they had was circumstantial. They can put him at the scene, but they can't prove that he pulled the trigger.
Derrick Thurman's trial gets underway. He's charged with the murder of 37-year-old Timothy Hobbs.
So many shootings happen in this area on a daily basis that there was barely any media coverage.
It was a few people that he knew that was there, maybe like 2 or 3. It wasn't packed at all. It was us, the jurors, and a few people on his side, and me and my mother and my cousin. The first day when he came in the courtroom, he looked and turned his head. I mean, because we were right there when he came in. And he knew that we were Timothy's family. And he never looked at us again.
Prosecutors build their case against Derrick using eyewitness accounts of his previous fight with Timothy, along with ballistics analysis and security footage from the apartments.
There's video of Mr. Thurman walking through the breezeway following Mr. Hobbs. The prosecutor blew up the video and you could actually see the gun in his hand too.
There were a number of people who testified, including Mr. Hobbs' fiance and her daughter, about recognizing Mr. Thurman as the person in the video.
From him walking in the courtroom and the walk that was on the surveillance, it was the same walk, same little limp that he had. That particular night, he knew he was there, and he waited. And when he seen my brother, he hid. And he shot him.
Shot him multiple times. Then as he tried to run, he continued to shoot. Dying in the way that he did is, is heartbreaking.
But Derrick's attorneys insist he's not the man on the video, and he had nothing to do with Timothy's death.
The defense maintains that just because Derrick has locks and he has the same build doesn't mean he is the person from the surveillance video. There are lots of people in the complex that could fit that description as well. Derrick claimed he was in a lot of pain and he was physically incapable of shooting Timothy Hobbs.
Part of his defense claim was he couldn't have done the shooting because he was incapacitated. He couldn't move around. Well, that's not the case with colostomy bag. People work and move around daily with them. It's not incapacitated.
When Derrick takes the stand, he says the prosecution's claims about him wanting revenge are wrong because he knew Timothy wasn't the one who shot him.
No one knew if Derrick truly believed that, or if he was just trying to distance himself from Timothy's murder by eliminating a motive.
So if you knew he didn't shoot you, why did you shoot him? Why did you shoot my brother? If you knew that he didn't shoot you at the time that you got shot, why? What reason?
Sanford, Florida is a charming waterfront community just steps away from Florida's largest tourist attractions. But hidden beneath Sanford's splendor is a long history of racial prejudice and discrimination. In February 2012, the shooting of Trayvon Martin would pull those deeply rooted issues into sharp focus, and the outcome of a controversial investigation would spark the Black Lives Matter movement, becoming the blueprint for a growing wave of social activism on a scale the world had never seen before. Miles from the hustle and bustle of Orlando, Florida, you'll find the town of Sanford. It's a quiet bedroom community nestled along the shores of scenic Lake Monroe.
Sanford is home, and there's no other word that I can say other than home. I eat, sleep, and breathe this place.
On the weekends, we would go to the parks, and you'd see people of all races and ethnicities enjoying each other's birthday parties, carnivals, festivals.
Sanford began, like many other cities in the South, as an agricultural center.
The city of Sanford at one point in time in the early 1900s was your #1 exporter of celery. When you go around the city of Sanford, you see all of these things say Celery Avenue, Celery City, Celery Estates, because they were all former celery fields.
Although Sanford's black workers provided most of all the labor in the fields, they were still treated as second-class citizens.
Those Jim Crow era laws that exist that disenfranchise people exist for them. And they want the means to support their family. They want to be able to go to the grocery store. They want to have a theater. And so what happens is some business owners, African American, decide that they're going to come up with their own city.
Between 1887 and 1891, two brothers and former slaves named Joseph and William Clark incorporate the first two all-black cities in Florida, Eatonville and Goldsboro.
There's no other place in the country like Goldsboro and Eatonville, where there are black cities created by black people for black people. So where they have a safe environment, where they feel safe in their spaces, they feel safe to thrive.
But as with many thriving black communities in America, Goldsboro's success would ultimately lead to its downfall. In neighboring Sanford, their city's mayor, Forrest Lake, had an insatiable appetite for expansion, and Goldsboro's independent charter impeded his plans.
He devised a plan to steal the charter of Goldsboro.
He went to the Florida State Legislature and asked that the Goldsboro Charter be dissolved so that Sanford could annex the area. But when it did that, it then went in and made changes. For instance, there was a street named after the black mayor for Goldsboro. They renamed that street after the white mayor of Sanford.
The citizens of Goldsboro sued, and the resulting court battles lasted more than 40 years. But in the end, the courts sided with Sanford. Over time, Goldsboro's story became a footnote in Sanford's history. The perception of harmony eventually settled in, and both communities found relative peace, as long as everyone knew their place.
You stay on your side of the tracks, we'll stay on our side of the tracks, and there won't be any issues.
But in 2012, the murder of Trayvon Martin would reopen those old wounds, forcing the city and the country to confront their troubling past. Just before 7 p.m. on February 26, 2012, 17-year-old Trayvon Martin leaves his father's home in Sanford. Inside a gated community known as the Retreat at Twin Lakes.
Just so happened to be the NBA All-Star weekend. It was about time for the game to come on. And Trayvon decided to go to the store.
Trayvon went to buy a couple of items, something that any 17-year-old kid would do, and he bought Skittles and a can of iced tea. As he was leaving, it was raining. He had on a hoodie, as we call them, to protect himself from the rain.
His family begins to worry when several hours pass, and Trayvon still hasn't returned home. But since Trayvon has some cousins in the area, Trayvon's dad feels no need to panic.
It was 10:30, 11 o'clock, somewhere around there. And when we started making phone calls to see where he was at, he wasn't answering his phone. I ended up dozing off. We left the back door unlocked so he can come back in the house.
What Trayvon's loved ones don't know is that he was involved in a terrifying incident within the gates of Twin Lakes earlier that night.
911, do you need police, fire, medical?
Maybe both, I'm not sure. There's just someone screaming outside. Hurry up, they're right outside my house.
Other 911 calls report shots fired. Sanford police officer Tony Raimondo is one of the first officers to respond to the scene.
When I get out of my car, I see a police officer standing with another individual. He looks like he's kind of got a busted up nose. Officer Smith points down to his belt where I see a gun kind of stuffed in his belt. And so immediately I'm thinking, okay, we have a suspect in custody.
Sergeant Raimondo is directed to a grassy area just off the sidewalk.
Officer Smith kind of motions down the sidewalk into the grassy area where I see a body lying there. And I go down into this grassy area to determine what the needs of the person laying there are.
Amidst the chaos of the scene, the gunman identifies himself as George Zimmerman, a 28-year-old resident and the Twin Lakes Neighborhood Watch Coordinator. Zimmerman claims he was suspicious of the young man and decided to follow him through the complex.
Some type of confrontation ensues. It becomes physical, and during that physical confrontation, shots are fired. Mr. Zimmerman alludes to the fact that he was defending himself.
Zimmerman says he fired one shot, striking the young man in the chest. Although he won't be identified until the following day, Sergeant Raimondo finds Trayvon Martin lying on the ground, bleeding and unconscious.
I was really taken in the moment that here's this young kid who really needs some help very quickly. I bend down, take a knee next to him, and immediately just try to get a pulse. I've got a couple kids that look just like him at the house. And I'm hoping that, under similar circumstances, somebody would help my children. And so what I decided to do is just initiate CPR. We did CPR for 7 minutes before rescue arrived.
Trayvon Benjamin Martin was born on February 5th, 1995 in Miami, Florida, to Tracy Martin and Sabrina Fulton.
Trayvon was my youngest son. I have 2 boys. Trayvon was my baby. It's a special bond that you have with your son. I say I substitute S-O-N with S-U-N because I say that my son is my sunshine.
When he was born, it was like a new beginning. I wanted him to have more than I had growing up. I wanted to be involved in his life.
Even after his parents divorced in 1999, Trayvon was surrounded by strong family support.
He grew up in a middle-class home, both parents working, so he just grew up with a regular average life, playing football and baseball and basketball and all of those things.
As he started getting older, he was pretty good with his hands, fixing on things, and he loved planes, and so that probably would have been his career.
I was very proud of him, but he had his growing pains like any other teenager.
By his junior year, Trayvon's desire for teenage independence led to him occasionally skipping school. One bout of truancy resulted in a week-long suspension, so his parents decided a break from Miami might do him some good.
My then fiance, Brandy Green, who's now my wife, Brandy Martin, lived up in Sanford.
His dad wanted him to spend some time with him, and he went up.
I wanted him to get his head clear. Decide your future now. It's early. Let me get you away from what's distracting you right now. And you come back and we'll start over.
But now, that fresh start has come to a violent and tragic end.
Once rescue arrived, they hooked up their leads to their equipment and worked on him for a short period of time and determined that he was deceased. And so we went from attempting to save his life to managing a crime scene.
With the limited information available at the scene, it's still unclear to authorities whether a crime has been committed at all. But as more of the story unfolds over the coming days, an ensuing controversy will throw the city of Sanford into an uncontrollable tailspin, and it will quickly find itself on the world stage for all the wrong reasons.
I remember seeing the lead investigator that night, and he says to me, "Hey, Tony, this one's going to be bad." And I was like, "What do you mean it's going to be bad? You got the guy, you got the gun, you got the body." And he's like, "Yeah, it's not that simple." Turns out he's exactly right.
Nearly a century after Sanford annexed the city of Goldsboro, the two communities have continued to keep their distance, albeit peacefully.
As long as you stayed where you're supposed to stay, it's fine. As long as you're not dating my daughter, you're fine. We don't have a problem with blacks. We don't have a problem with whites.
By 2012, a handful of gated communities dotted Sanford's landscape, creating both physical and socioeconomic barriers to those who live outside the wrought iron fences.
Most of the time, those are built particularly with the express purpose of keeping black people out. And I think that was the thing that got to me. It's a 17-year-old black boy being killed. It's a gated community. George Zimmerman didn't think that he was supposed to be where he was.
As George Zimmerman is taken to the Sanford Police Department for further questioning, Trayvon Martin's family is now starting to panic.
I got a call Monday morning from Tracy telling me that Trayvon didn't come home. Now, for me as a parent, that's unusual because, our kids come home at night. And so I'm just wondering, what is going on,
At 8:30 a.m., Trayvon's father decides it's time to call the police.
I told him the situation that my son Trayvon was missing. I gave him a description, what he was wearing last. And so they said, okay, we'll call you back.
Dispatchers put out an APB for Trayvon. That's when Officer Brian McIntosh makes the connection.
Black male, 17 years old, didn't come home. Upon reviewing the call, I made calls to my sergeant, thinking that it could be the juvenile from the night before in the homicide.
I'd never forget it. It was a drizzly day. I'm waiting on the police to show up. I'm thinking I'm gonna file a missing persons report, and I see a chaplain pull up. These two officers, they pulled out photos of crime scene photos. Trayvon laying on the ground, deceased. That began the nightmare.
Tracy called back, and I didn't believe him. And I just could not, I couldn't imagine losing my 17-year-old. I was numb.
As a parent, you don't prepare yourself for the death of your child. It does something to you, emotionally and physically. Put you in a bad space. And so my next question was, who did it?
In an interrogation room at Sanford's police headquarters, George Zimmerman is giving detectives his side of the story.
So your first name is George? Yes, sir. And your last name is Zimmerman? Yes, sir. So start from the beginning. About what time yesterday?
About 7 p.m. I left my house to go to the grocery store, and I was leaving my neighborhood when I saw this guy looking towards the house, and I knew he didn't live there, so it made me a little suspicious.
He thought that Trayvon had something to do with some burglaries he said that had occurred in the area.
I called the non-emergency line. As I was on the phone, he walked past my car, and I lost visual contact of him. The operator asked me if I could get to somewhere where I could see, or at least give him a direction of where he was headed.
And so he gets out of his car and he follows this young man into a pretty poorly lit area of the retreat of Twin Lakes.
That's when Zimmerman claims things took a violent turn.
He said he appeared out of nowhere. He came out of the bushes. And according to George Zimmerman, Trayvon Martin had attacked him.
He ended up on top of me, and he just kept punching my face and my head. I was screaming for help, and I got a little bit of leverage, and I started to sit up. But when I shifted, my jacket came up and exposed my firearm, and that's when he sat up and looked and said, "You're gonna die tonight, motherfucker."
And so he says that, in defense of his own life, he had to fire a round, which hits Mr. Martin's center mass in his chest, ultimately taking his life.
And as soon as the round went off, he stopped attacking you?
He sat back, and he said, "You got me. Or you got it. Whatever."
I'm sure it all happened just like quick, too.
It felt like an eternity.
Based on his initial statement, Florida's Stand Your Ground law has potentially given George Zimmerman the authority to shoot Trayvon Martin.
If you take Mr. Zimmerman's statement at face value, he was the subject of this assault at a place that he had a legal right to be. What our law says is you can defend yourself up to deadly force.
They let him go home, let him take a shower, let him sleep in his bed that night.
Although no charges are filed that night, the case is eventually sent to the Attorney General's office to determine if any charges are even warranted at all. But for Trayvon's family and many in the Sanford community, it appeared as if the case was already closed.
It just didn't sit well with me how they just let him go home. I knew that I had to do something. I told Detective Chris Serrano I need to get my son back to Miami so we can bury him, and then I'll I'll be back. I told myself that I'd fight and I'll keep fighting and I'll keep fighting until we get what we feel is justice.
It has been less than 24 hours since 17-year-old Trayvon Martin was shot to death in Sanford, and many in the community begin to fear the case has already been closed.
A black child was effectively stalked by an older white man in a neighborhood and was killed, and was going to get away with it because of a law in Florida that no one had ever heard of before.
I knew my son. I knew that he wasn't a confrontational type of person. He was just walking home. He had his hood on, just minding his business.
The family's frustrations are only magnified when they receive a copy of Trayvon's autopsy report.
I started looking at the autopsy report, started seeing the damage that was done by that one bullet. It had a severed spleen, lungs that had been torn in half, kidney was tore up, heart was split in half. It didn't coincide with the story that they were telling us. It didn't coincide with him being attacked by Trayvon.
There was nothing on his knuckles, no blood, no scratches, no nothing. Just nice, clean hands. And if you get into a fight, you're gonna have something on you.
When Tracy Martin brings his concerns to the Sanford police, they insist their hands are tied. It would be up to the Attorney General to file charges, if any.
The investigators sent everything to the state attorney's office to get their opinion on what do we have here, how should we proceed.
I would ask the chief why and what's going on, and he would continually tell me this is an ongoing criminal investigation, and at the time, they do not feel they had enough to criminally indict Mr. Zimmerman.
I knew that I could not stay in Miami and allow that to happen, that the person that had shot and killed my son not be arrested. And so that night, I packed my things and we went to Sanford.
After Trayvon's funeral, his family begins applying pressure to law enforcement by pushing the story into the national spotlight.
We started doing press conferences every day, 2, 3, 4 times a day. It was like an email blast that, hey, listen, something ain't sitting well in Sanford, Florida.
You have the most innocent person in the world, and just because they're black and they wear a hoodie on their head, they're all of a sudden, they're looked at as a criminal.
Racial profiling has to stop, Mr. Speaker. Just because someone wears a hoodie does not make them a hoodlum.
That was the wellspring of the outrage. People got progressively more upset and saw it as sort of like a state-sanctioned lynching.
For parents, they saw Trayvon as being their child. And the young people saw Trayvon as themselves.
The conversation about stand your ground took center stage, and that was sort of everybody's introduction to the law.
Could you shoot someone just because? What does that really mean? What's the purpose or the intent behind this law? Was it a racist law to begin with?
The growing media attention garners support for Trayvon and his family around the country.
Trayvon Martin brought that racism right back up front in your face and made a lot of us realize that it's time to push back and shut down traffic, let folks know what was going on.
All of those things look like a repeat of history. How you did it during the civil rights. Then they just had TVs. The power of social media is what brought the attention and what recognized and catapulted to another level.
According to Trayvon's family, the added exposure causes those in charge of the investigation to become even more guarded.
It goes from, we just want to give you limited detail to now we're not going to give you any details because this is an ongoing investigation.
But the Sanford Police Department insisted they were doing everything by the book.
I believe that the Sanford Police Department did everything by contemporary standards to investigate that case. I don't believe that this case was handled any different than any other one would have been, but I understand how the inference could be made that it was.
On March 8th, the family files a lawsuit to release all public records on the case.
Trayvon Martin's issue was not like the other issues where there was a camera or a cell phone recording it. We want to hear the tapes. We want to hear the audio, the 911 call.
I remember going to the courthouse early on to file a court order. The more we dug into it, the more we found out. I couldn't believe it. Trayvon didn't know what to think. He didn't know why this guy was following him. He didn't know why this guy got out of his vehicle and chased him. He had no clue.
As outrage over the murder of Trayvon Martin dominates social media, the rift between Sanford's black residents and law enforcement grows wider.
George was not a police officer. Still, it was felt that law enforcement could have done different. And so now we got a trust issue.
They let somebody go within hours of killing a young child, a person that did not have a weapon on him. The only thing he had on him was Skittles and an Arizona iced tea.
The Sanford Police Department takes the brunt of the blame for not charging Zimmerman, even though they say there was enough evidence for an arrest.
The state attorney told us no. They're ultimately the ones responsible for the charging decisions, but the narrative is never formed that way. It was always Sanford Police, Sanford Police, Sanford Police.
On March 16, 2012, under mounting pressure, the Sanford Police Department releases all 8 911 calls placed on the night of the shooting, including the one from George Zimmerman himself.
Sanford Police Department. Hey, we've had some break-ins in my neighborhood, and there's a real suspicious guy. This guy looks like he's up to no good, or he's on drugs or something. It's raining, and he's just walking around looking about. Okay, and this guy, is he white, black, or Hispanic? He looks black.
The tapes reveal Zimmerman was told to wait for police, an order he chose to ignore.
We got him on the way. Just let me know if this guy does anything else. Okay. These assholes, they always get away. Are you following him? Yeah. Okay, we don't need you to do that.
You listen to the tape and he doesn't wait, right? Like, that's the thing. He's under the impression that Trayvon just walking home poses so much of a threat that he can't wait for the authority that he has called upon to address it.
Recordings of the neighbors' 911 calls are even more difficult for the family to hear.
I don't know what's going on.
So you think he's yelling help?
Yes. There's gunshots.
You just heard gunshots?
Yes.
How many?
This one.
In the background, you can hear scuffling going on. You can hear Trayvon screaming, and then you hear pop. You hear the shot. And you don't hear no more screaming.
There is some debate over whose voice is calling for help, however. Trayvon's family is certain it's him, but at least one witness says it's Zimmerman.
What he says to us is he's inside watching TV, and he hears screaming. He walks out of that back patio area of his house, and he sees Trayvon kind of pummeling George Zimmerman in what he describes as MMA style. He says that Mr. Zimmerman is screaming for help.
Anybody with a loaded gun would not be screaming for help. It would seem to me that a 17-year-old who felt that he was about to be shot was screaming for help.
4 days after the tapes are released, Trayvon's parents find a witness who can speak for him.
Trayvon, like any other kid, love his phone. I was trying to backtrack and see who's the last person he talked to. Trayvon was killed at 7:23 p.m. And I was like, look, man, this is interesting. He was on the phone talking with somebody.
The person on the phone with Trayvon was a friend from high school named Rachel Gentel.
She spoke to him when the altercation occurred.
He mentioned to the young lady on the phone that somebody was following him, and she told him he should run, and he did.
A few moments later, Rachel heard the sounds of an argument. Then the call was cut off.
Once the phone dropped between those 30, 40, 50, 60 seconds, you really don't know what happened. But I know for a fact that he wasn't doing nothing. This proves the theory that He wasn't looking in nobody's window. He wasn't trying to break in nobody, but he's on the phone.
The family and their attorney no longer trust the powers that be with the new evidence, so they give Rachel's statement directly to the press instead. The news results in more protests, and this time, demonstrators in the tens of thousands descend on the city of Sanford.
I really think that shook up the state of Florida.
You had 50,000 plus people, and you saw all these signs that were made. And you saw the start of Black Lives Matter.
Trayvon hit everybody like, are y'all for real? This cannot possibly still be happening. We have to do something. We have to go outside. We have to march. We have to raise awareness. Somebody has to understand that we are angry as a people, and we won't take this land down.
No justice! When do we want?
While the news of Trayvon Martin's death sweeps the nation, the city of Sanford is forced to reconcile its own dark past, dating back to Sanford's hostile annexation of the all-black city of Goldsboro.
It really seemed like the death of Trayvon took a scab off of what had not healed in the city of Sanford, but was kind of just being lived with.
The city of Sanford stole an entire city. Each time I drove by your neighborhood, it was pretty and had all these flowers. Well, where did you get the money from for your neighborhood? You took it from mine. And you left mine for dead. So we kept pouring salt on the wound, pouring salt on the wound, pouring salt on the wound, and the wound never healed.
Protesters filled the streets of Sanford, demanding justice for Trayvon. Among them are many from Sanford's own black community.
Then the community put pressure on its elected officials to change the prosecutors that were in the case.
We met with the city manager. We met with the mayor, and that's when he assigned a special prosecutor, which is Angela Corey.
On April 11th, 2012, the newly appointed special prosecutor agrees to bring formal charges against George Zimmerman.
Today, we filed an information charging George Zimmerman with murder in the second degree. A capias has been issued for his arrest.
The charges, however, are met with mixed reactions.
When I looked at the charge, second-degree murder, I thought it would be very difficult for them to prove that case because they would have to prove not only did George Zimmerman kill Trayvon Martin without justification, but that there was some evil intent or ill will involved. It seemed as if a prudent prosecutor would have charged manslaughter, which was more likely to get a conviction.
It feels like theater. The system does tend to overcharge black people, right? And I think they're making a show of, hey, we're also doing this to someone that killed a black person. Like, this is what justice looks like. This is equal opportunity, right? What they wanted was a public relations win more than they wanted George Zimmerman held accountable for his actions.
Those concerns grow in the months leading up to the trial, and they're only magnified by Zimmerman's well-documented attempts to control the narrative.
And then I thought to get out and look for a street sign.
Right. Often in cases like this where force is used or some crime is alleged, people will, express their Fifth Amendment protections and say, look, I don't want to cooperate. I don't want to say anything. Mr. Zimmerman was the opposite. He was looking for opportunities to tell his story. He even voluntarily went back to the scene and walked through it with investigators while being filmed. He said, yo, you got a problem?
Part of what was so enraging about the event was that in no way did it conform to the notion of self-defense as we understand it. The idea that it did is bullshit.
When Zimmerman's attorneys add the footage to their evidence list, it further angers Trayvon's supporters.
If you have just a small glimpse of what a crime scene is and what a murder suspect, how he's treated, you know that they don't take the admitted shooter to the crime scene for him to give his accounts of what happened there.
Oh, I tried to sit up, and that's when he grabbed me by the head and tried to slam my head down. And
What does this remind you of? Look at Buffalo. The guy who went and killed all those black people in that supermarket. Police brought him out. Not a mark on him. They brought Dylan Roof, the boy who shot up all those black folks in a church. They put a vest on him to protect him. It makes you feel like they agree with what they did. And the white man can come in and take your life and you can't do anything about it.
Racial tensions continue to escalate through the jury selection, setting the stage for the trial to come.
One particular white lady said, well, if Trayvon Martin's dad would have been in his life, that he'd still be here. And that had to be the most dumbest statement I ever heard.
All that does for those who believe in the value of black life is intensify things and say, like, well, the enemy has showed up, right? And we know what we're up against.
They're going to defame, they're going to assassinate your character. They're going to do everything they can in their power to discourage you from fighting for your loved one. But at the end of the day, you got to keep fighting.
We're not going to stop until we get justice for Trayvon.
Amid national scrutiny, the murder trial for George.
That's the whole thing. Because if you can't talk about race, you can't talk about why does George Zimmerman perceive Trayvon Martin as a threat? Why does he feel that he has the authority to approach Trayvon Martin?
Prosecutors paint Zimmerman as a wannabe cop who was looking for a fight.
Observe and report, right? Isn't that what the neighborhood watch is about? You observe and report. He didn't choose to do that. He got involved. He injected himself into the situation.
The defense sets the tone for its response in its opening statement.
Knock, knock. Who's there? George Zimmerman. George Zimmerman, who? All right, good. You're on the jury.
The defense attorney opened up with a knock-knock joke.
Nothing?
This is really like the trial of the century where you got a bunch of racial implications, and we were damn near on the brink of racial war. It was just like distasteful. From that point, it kind of showed that the defense attorney looked at it as a joke.
They turned it around and made this trial about things that had nothing to do with the fact that he was an unarmed kid and he was being chased by someone with a gun.
Trayvon's family and supporters believed the defense's primary tactic was to put Trayvon on trial.
The way in which they went about defending their client was defaming the victim. And defaming the victim through racially coded messaging that was reinforcing a narrative of danger that is inherent in black youth.
Just listening to them talk about Trayvon and who Trayvon was, and they never met him. They didn't know him. He wasn't committing any crime. He had never been arrested. None of those things.
That was tough to sit through. The state is supposed to defend the victim. In this case, the state let the defendant portray himself as the victim.
And that's when he grabbed me by the head and tried to slam my head down.
His claims that he was getting his head bashed and Trayvon reached for his gun. Number one, there was no DNA from Trayvon on the gun. Number two, the nail clippings of Trayvon, there was no DNA in his nails.
Zimmerman himself never takes the stand, but his story is still entered into evidence.
One of the things that I thought was unusual was allowing George Zimmerman's tour with the police department to come in without him ever having to testify, to be subject to cross-examination and have to answer the prosecution's questions. If you're going to assert self-defense, 9 times out of 10, you have to testify to what led you to believe that your life was in danger. You have to testify as to why you took the actions that you did. And it seemed as if George Zimmerman was let off the hook from having to do that.
Still, Trayvon's loved ones remain optimistic.
I felt that the justice system would see that this was an unarmed teenager and that a 28-year-old adult followed, chased, pursued, profiled, and ultimately shot and killed a 17-year-old. I just thought that it didn't matter what color skin the person was.
After a 3-week trial, the jury begins deliberations. 16 hours later, they return with a verdict. Not guilty on all counts.
It's just disbelief. Just like, how? It doesn't make sense. It just made me feel like every other African American, that the justice system is just not for us.
They want to blame Trayvon. They want to say, oh, Trayvon fought back. He fought back because somebody followed him in a car and got out and accosted him. Who wouldn't fight back? You understand what I'm saying? They want to talk about stand your ground. Trayvon was standing his ground.
Following the trial, demonstrators staged peaceful protests in cities across America. And although the outcome is not what they hoped for, Trayvon's case will inspire a new generation of social activists.
We opened up a lot of eyes. What it did was ensured that the name Trayvon Martin will forever be woven into the American flag. Some say that he divided the country. Either way, his name will never be forgotten in U.S. history. That says a lot for a 17-year-old black boy in Miami.
Bensonhurst, New York is known as the Little Italy of Brooklyn. It's a neighborhood that carries with it a deep sense of pride, tradition, and heritage. But in the 1980s, those same qualities gave Bensonhurst a reputation as a racist community, particularly toward African Americans. And in August of 1989, long-simmering racial tensions erupt in a night of bloodshed, leaving teenager Yusef Hawkins dead at the hands of a white mob.
Sir, what is your name?
Joseph Thurman. The hunt for his killer will send police into a standoff with organized crime. Meanwhile, Brooklyn's black community rises up to lead the most explosive protest in city history, demanding justice for Yusef and taking a sharp bite out of the Big Apple's reputation as America's melting pot. Bensonhurst is situated in southwest Brooklyn, just a stone's throw away from the glitz and glamour of Manhattan. Yet it feels like a world away.
Bensonhurst is part of Brooklyn. Brooklyn is part of New York City, so it's not rural, it's not remote, nothing luxurious. It is a middle-class working neighborhood.
The community was settled by Italian immigrants in the mid-20th century.
They call it the Little Italy of Brooklyn, Bensonhurst, and it was. Basically, it was an Italian area from back in the 50s. And how it happens is, you know, they get off the boat and they follow each other around. You stick with your own kind. The restaurants are great. The food is phenomenal. The clothing stores, you know, we like our Italian. We like to look good. During the Saturday Night Fever era, that's all Bensonhurst guys.
By 1989, Bensonhurst had become a close-knit neighborhood filled with working families.
On Sundays, they would close this 4-lane street down and play stickball and music and barbecue and everybody making the sauce.
It was considered a very safe neighborhood.
But this safety came at a cost.
When you think Italian, it's kind of stereotypical, but you think about the mafia, right? But this is true in this scenario. It was a mob town.
A lot of the people in the neighborhood at that time credited the mob with keeping it a safe neighborhood. The suggestion was that if somebody were to try something here in Bensonhurst, something would happen to them.
However, protection was only available to Bensonhurst Italian residents. Others, especially those who looked different, were shunned.
Bensonhurst was a predominantly Italian white neighborhood, and many people who lived there viewed African Americans as being the source of all of our urban problems. And they didn't want black people living in their neighborhood, shopping in their neighborhood, driving through their neighborhood.
Bensonhurst was very provincial in this way. If you were a black person walking down the street in Bensonhurst, and if you were walking past the wrong business, like certain social clubs, back then it would not be unusual for one or two people to stop you and say, "Where are you going? What are you doing here?"
And this attitude extended well beyond Bensonhurst borders.
Bensonhurst wasn't alone. There are many other neighborhoods throughout the city where we find the same attitudes. New York in general was like the melting pot that will not melt.
New York is segregated and racist. This is the New York we're talking about. The Big Apple never gave us a bite.
And over time, segregation set the stage for bloodshed.
During that period of time, there were several racially motivated murders.
In 1986, Willie Turks, for example, was the MTA driver who got pulled out of a car and, killed by a white mob. And then in 1989, the Central Park Five was also going on.
It's a symptom, right? But it tells us that there is an undercurrent of hatred and hostility amongst the races.
So New York was a divided New York, and of course all that exploded on August 23rd, 1989.
Shortly after 9 p.m. on that fateful night, the NYPD 62nd Precinct receives a panicked 911 call.
Police, David Avenue and 20th Avenue. Somebody just got shot. Somebody just got shot. A bunch of white boys just shot a black guy. They were on foot? Yeah, on foot. A bunch of white boys. Thank you. Police will be there.
When police get the call, they're immediately on edge.
I got the chills because it was a bunch of white kids who jumped a bunch of black kids. And I said, let's go and pack a bag because it's going to be a long one. And sure enough, it was.
Police arrive at the scene and find a young black man has been shot multiple times in the chest.
He was bleeding profusely. An emergency medical service ambulance was dispatched to the scene. And the medics on board the ambulance tried to do what they could to give initial first aid. The scene at that point was kind of pandemonium.
The victim's three friends are also at the scene, and they identify him as 16-year-old East New York resident Yusef Hawkins.
He was taken to a hospital nearby, and the doctors began their work. They knew they had their work cut out for them.
Yusef Hawkins was born and raised in the predominantly black neighborhood of East New York in Brooklyn.
Yusef and his friends were normal kids, go to school, do their homework, ride their bike around the neighborhood. Just a sort of a normal kind of life that they were living as young people at the time.
His family, loved him. He was just a beautiful person. Had a sense of humor and very sensitive to people's feelings and suffering and stuff like that.
He was just like a really well-rounded kid, played a lot of sports, hung out a lot with his friends in the community.
Yusef had plans to attend Transit Tech, a vocational school in East New York. After graduating, he dreamed of becoming a technical engineer.
He wanted to be a subway motorman. His words, according to his mother, had been, I want to drive the train. And he did well in school.
He was ambitious. He was extremely intelligent.
So how did this promising young man end up shot on the streets of Bensonhurst?
He wasn't participating in anything that would make sense of this story,
He was just a typical New York City teenager. He was not in trouble with the law in any way at all.
As detectives questioned Yusef's friends, they learned the group had traveled to Bensonhurst that evening to buy a used car.
They saw an ad, they were interested in buying a car, they were going to go and look at it.
Brooklyn is a big place, and going to Bensonhurst was a place that he had never been, his friends had never been. They might as well have been going to Rhode Island. It was an adventure. And when they got out of the subway in Bensonhurst, they had become lost. And they continued to walk. There were no cell phones in those days. They were trying to get directions by looking at a map.
They just walked down a street they'd never been on before, in a neighborhood they'd never been to before, with this illusion of feeling secure when they absolutely were not. They were walking into an incredibly lethal situation.
From their perspective, they had reached a place where there was a schoolyard, where there were a number, like a large number, of white kids who were hanging around there.
Yusef's friends say that the crowd of 20 to 30 white men began following them and yelling racial slurs and threatening them with baseball bats.
You can imagine the fear. It's like, why are these people saying these things? Why are they harassing me? Why are they threatening to do bodily harm? Why are there baseball bats? I'm sure there was a lot of fear that came upon them in a very short amount of time.
The crowd surrounds Yusef and his friends outside of a store.
They had nowhere to run.
Detectives learned that a young white man emerged from the crowd and fired several shots into Yusef's chest. At the sound of gunshots, the mob scattered.
We know that 3 shots found their way into Yusef Hawkins's chest. Yusef collapsed onto the sidewalk. He was still clutching a Snickers bar.
Yusef's friends say the men that attacked them were strangers. They have no idea why they were targeted, other than the color of their skin.
These 3 young men didn't pose a threat to anybody. They weren't provocative. They were there minding their own business. They were baby-faced boys. They weren't men. They had no idea what they were walking into.
And by the very next morning, all hell will break loose.
This was a different type of situation, and what none of us knew was how this was going to affect New York City as a whole.
The New York City Police Department is investigating the shooting of 16-year-old Yusef Hawkins in the Bensonhurst neighborhood of Brooklyn. Detectives have reason to believe this was a racially motivated attack.
Early reports was that there was a large group of young men that had congregated in a schoolyard where they surrounded 3 young black men who had walked into the neighborhood. And from there was a shooting.
In the chaotic aftermath, Yusef was rushed to an area hospital.
He was bleeding profusely. He was taken to a hospital nearby, and the doctors began their work.
The surgeon who opened his chest at Kings County Hospital and tried to repair the heart, and he said that Yusef's heart literally fell apart in his hands.
It was a murder. It was tragic. It was a murder.
Within hours of the shooting, Yusef's murder is front-page news.
When the incident first happened, it was something that you saw on the 11 o'clock news. And the New York Daily News, the New York Post.
The information that got out was this was a young man who was black, who was shot by a white person after being pursued by a bat-wielding mob of white young men.
As word spreads, community members question why Yusef would ever set foot in Bensonhurst.
It was kind of like whispered amongst other black people, like, we don't go over there, it's not too safe over there, because they don't like black people. They don't treat black people very well.
Older people have fear and say, hey, you need to not venture into those areas. So I think Yusef knew that there was potential danger, but I think that he was insistent upon being a human being that should be allowed to walk wherever I please and buy a car wherever I want to buy a car. And unfortunately, it cost him his life.
At the scene, detectives search for potential witnesses.
This is 1989, so we didn't have video cameras on every pole, and there was not a lot of forensic evidence, and the police will start to canvass houses, which means they'll go door to door, knocking on doors, ringing doorbells, asking people proactively, did you see anything, did you hear anything, what do you know?
There's always that little lady that looks out the window. There's always that nosy guy who's taking out the garbage. You gotta find him. So I went to 123 68th Street, and Mr. Smith didn't see anything. But Mr. Bond downstairs heard the shots, looked outside, saw a bunch of kids running.
The witness says he had seen several of the kids before, hanging outside a local candy shop.
There was this candy store, it was called Sal's Snacks and Candies, run by a guy who they referred to as Sal Squid or Mr. Squid. And there was a collage on the wall in there. The collage was just random pictures of neighborhood characters that were slapped on a piece of oak tag. I'm sure that it was cool to have your picture up there.
It was a collage of a whole bunch of the neighborhood kids who were at the schoolyard.
It was like a photo lineup on steroids. So the detectives took that collage and they used it sort of as a photo array to identify potential suspects.
Detectives asked area residents if any of these teenagers were part of the mob that attacked Yusef.
They found who they could from that group. If they didn't know the name, they talked to people who would give them the name.
Huge step forward. A huge step forward. If we didn't have that collage, I'd probably still be out in the street looking for guys.
Just as the investigation starts to gain traction, though, residents of Bensonhurst close ranks around their own.
What happened was, I find you. I need your son. Okay, then your son's being held. You call up his best friend's father and say, listen, don't let them take him because my son's collared.
People in the neighborhood, telephone, telegraph, tell a neighbor, were quick to tell other people, hey, the cops are arresting everybody. They're questioning everybody. Tell your son to take a ride to Manhattan.
But as Bensonhurst shuts down, Brooklyn heats up.
It hit the media, and I was so livid. I was so angry. Not another one.
Here you had a kid who was murdered, 16-year-old little boy who played basketball, who loved to ride his bike. You had him murdered.
The energy from our black community was at the highest pitch level it could possibly ever be. Everybody was angry and fired up.
I think that people were outraged and they were willing to die. I think that is what everyone felt. They felt like their son had died and they were willing to die.
The community rose up and said, oh no, this is not 1889, this is 1989. We don't do that anymore. But as the days went on, prominent folks in the African American community began to rise up and say what happened here was a grave injustice. We cannot allow this kind of violence to go on because then our city will go up in flames.
The public response was immediate. The city was boiling over, and within a short period of time, white people and black people began to mobilize.
We need to go to Bensonhurst and make them feel uncomfortable just how we feel uncomfortable every single day. We need to go and stand for what we believe in. We need to go fight for black lives because if not, they're gonna keep killing us.
Murder of 16-year-old Yusef Hawkins in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn has sparked widespread anger and exposed an ugly truth about New York City.
The reason for the visceral public reaction, in particular in the black community, was the fact that he was not armed. You know, he and his friends, they weren't going there to pick a fight. They were going there to look at a car. And so the fact that he was on an ordinary errand and wound up losing his life, that is what caused people to feel so much outrage.
And to make matters worse, attacks like the one against Yusef were not just isolated to Bensonhurst. They were happening throughout the city.
So in the 80s, there was huge racial tensions in New York.
So if you look at that time frame, many incidents of black folks, you know, getting killed, you know, either by the police or, you know, by angry white folks. And so you did have sort of that backdrop to what happened with Yusef.
In 1982, Willie Turks was walking in his car in Gravesend, not far from Bensonhurst, white community in Brooklyn. They snatch him out of his car, kill him.
Also, a few years prior to this, you had a mob that had chased Michael Griffith to his death on the Belt Parkway.
Then we have the incident with Bernard Goetz on the subway, which was a huge media frenzy. It had a white man shooting several black youths on a subway car. 1989 was an extraordinary year because we also had the Central Park Five, where you had a white woman that was raped, and they settled on this narrative about these black youths, and we now know that it was a lie.
This cycle keeps continuing to happen over and over. The same traumatic stories just done in different ways. And so I think that a lot of people were starting to see that whenever our children leaves our community, they're not safe. They're either being accused of something or they're being killed. So there was a lot of racial tension going on.
Race relations, it was simmering. It was simmering. And it took just one incident to sort of, blow the whole pot off, the simmering tensions.
Given recent history, Brooklyn's black community decides enough is enough.
If we don't take matters into our own hands and protect us and protect our own children, who's gonna do it? Who's gonna do it?
So now you got young black people and old black people stepping out to the forefront saying no more. And there was this energy out here, and black leadership during that time galvanized it and pointed it in the right direction.
One of the most vocal leaders of the movement is Reverend Al Sharpton, who organizes numerous marches from Yusef's East New York neighborhood straight into the belly of the beast in Bensonhurst.
In 1955, it was Martin Luther King. In 1987, it was Al Sharpton. He led the first riot into Bensonhurst. And he marched black folks into that neighborhood.
Hundreds of protesters turn out for the march, including City Councilman and Black Panther Charles Barrett.
I said, hey, I'm not gonna sit here angry. We gotta turn this pain to power. Okay, this march, it was the threat that you will not be in peace as long as you're allowing your neighbor and your system to oppress us like this. No, you're not gonna live in peace.
I had been invited by Reverend Sharpton to come along on the first march. I remember young men in the back of the bus with a boombox who were playing Fight the Power by Public Enemy. But there were elder people. There were one or two mothers with strollers. These were people that we would not see at demonstrations of this type in New York City under normal circumstances. But to these people, Yusef Hawkins was their child.
In Bensonhurst, a chilling sight awaits the protesters.
It's like a powder keg out here. The tension, you can cut it with a knife. I remember marching and seeing how our community was so fired up. And then the response, the reception, you thought you were in the South. I couldn't believe my eyes. A wedding party came with the groom and their maids of honor, whatever, on the corner that called us the N-word. A wedding party.
All of a sudden, it didn't feel like Brooklyn anymore. It felt like Mississippi. It felt like Alabama. I remember Reverend Sharpton being asked by a reporter, do you think there might be violence? Reverend Sharpton said to her, there's already been violence. Yusef is dead. But the marchers remained peaceful. This was an amazingly peaceful demonstration for 600 people who were afraid for their children, afraid for themselves.
Al Sharpton was a beast. He went and marched in Bensonhurst 20 times.
But as the rallies continue, Reverend Sharpton is attacked, just 1 block from where Yusef was shot.
Everything just snowballed. Sharpton gets stabbed by an Italian kid with a knife.
Sharpton is rushed to a hospital, but survives his injuries. And in the days and weeks that follow, he continues to drive the movement, even while he heals.
I seriously do not think that Reverend Al Sharpton has ever gotten enough credit. He was the spokesman for an urban civil rights movement.
But as Sharpton's movement rages on the streets, detectives are working the case, and one name has risen to the top of the suspect list.
There was a young man who was a little bit of an up-and-comer, ended up saying some things and doing some things that led to the death of Yusef Hawkins.
white residents clash with black protesters over the murder of Yusef Hawkins, his family steps back from the fray to mourn his loss.
There was a large crowd of people who were gathered at the funeral home.
I looked at the people at the funeral, how sad they were, how angry they were, how frustrated they were. And if that could happen to him, it could happen to any one of us.
Meanwhile, in Bensonhurst, police are shaking down witnesses for information.
You're looking at a mob of 35 kids. And of course, everybody in Bensonhurst who had any connection to any of these people knew exactly what happened and who was involved. So there was no shortage of people to talk to.
Surprisingly, every witness gives the same name.
During the cultivating of the witnesses, the one kid that everyone was talking about was Keith Mandela.
According to witnesses, Keith Mandela was not just a member of the mob that attacked Yusef, he was the reason it formed in the first place. So detectives called Keith in for questioning.
He was, acting like most kids from the neighborhood. I don't talk to the cops. So I kind of said, listen, when you go to Rikers, you're going to be a part of a group that murdered a black boy. You're not going to make it in there. You're going to be somebody's girlfriend. And he broke. And that's when we found out what it was about.
According to Keith, the trouble all started with a girl named Gina.
He had started a relationship with a young lady by the name of Gina Feliciano. She moved in upstairs above the store where they hung out. And he started a physical relationship with her.
The Gina and Keith situation is something that people in the neighborhood had varying things to say about. And some of their comments were directed very badly at Gina and her virtue.
She was just a plaything for Keith.
According to Keith, Gina flew into a rage after learning she wasn't the only woman in his life.
They told us there was going to be a party, which she expected him to attend with her, and he said, no, I have a girlfriend. And with that, she got very upset. She got insulted by that. And she said, my brother is coming down tonight with his friends to get you.
She told him he's going to bring some of his friends with him who are also black, and they're going to beat the crap out of Keith and his friends.
So one boy tells another, another tells another, and before you know it, that night, there's 20, 24 kids on the corner going to protect and defend their friend Keith because these guys are coming.
They were waiting for, as one of them put it, black kids to come. And in their mind, there was going to be trouble.
And once Yusef and his friends arrived on that street corner, the witnesses are all in agreement about what happened next.
You've got a bunch of young men with golf clubs and bats waiting in a schoolyard for people they believed were going to make trouble. They saw three people who, in their minds, fit the description of these people they thought were coming.
The white teenagers, they didn't have a specific target. They didn't have a name. They just had a skin color. And so when they saw Yusef and his friends, they just assumed that it was those boys.
Yusef and his friends found themselves surrounded by a group of white kids. They were penned in, walled in, whatever you want to say. They had no place to go. And they just parted like the Red Sea. The gunman raised his hand and shot Yusef Hawkins in the chest.
The witnesses say Keith Mandela didn't fire that weapon, and neither did they.
He was like, I didn't shoot him. I didn't want this. This is not what, I didn't want this.
Given the racial undertones of the case, the district attorney decides to prosecute to the fullest extent of the law.
And a decision was made, if a person had a bat, that person would be charged with murder, because in this case, the fact that these young men were unable to move from where they were, they couldn't run, they couldn't hide. And so whoever was there with a bat would have been as responsible for Yusef Hawkins' death as the young man who had the gun.
The NYPD rounds up almost a dozen members of the bat-wielding mob.
The names that came up pretty quickly were John Vento, Steve Carreri, and Charlie Stressler, who was the player who brought the baseball bats, helped to whip up the crowd and distribute those bats to the young men that were there waiting to join the fight.
But the gunman himself remains at large.
They wanted the gunman, but nobody was giving him up. Everybody was deaf and dumb. Everybody was like, no, I didn't see that part of it. I ran away. So knowing who the gunman was the big puzzle. And for NYPD, it was the big pride.
Weeks after the murder of Yusuf Hawkins, protesters continue to flood the streets of Bensonhurst, Brooklyn.
I think the reason why Bensonhurst became ground zero for activism was because black people was fed up.
It's just not going to be business as usual. You disrupted our life, we're disrupting yours. Nobody should be resting in peace for what you did to Yusuf Hawkins. So that's why it was important for us to keep going.
My fire was ignited. Like, I hated racism, right? I hated anybody who participated in racism. I wanted my people to thrive, to survive, to like overcome.
As the protests continue, New York City investigators work to find the alleged gunman.
You're taking a 17, 18-year-old kid and you're telling him, you're going to jail for murder. I didn't do it. Well, who did? And that's how it came about. Guys were saying, well, this guy Joey Farmer, he's not part of our crew, but somebody brought him along.
Detectives dig into Joey Farmer's background, learning he keeps dangerous company.
Joey had mob connections.
The kid, Farmer, comes from a hard knock family. They were connected. They were heavy into drugs. They owned a construction company. Yeah, they were tough.
There was this traffic accident when he was a boy, which he was injured, and the injury was to his head. He was considered to be very slow.
Joey Farmer he's no rocket scientist. You know what Joey Farmer reminded me of? There's a wise guy out there, he's in jail now. Gas pipe Casio. I don't think he's got the intelligence of a squirrel, but he was vicious.
But there's just one problem. Joey Farmer has disappeared.
Well, we do know that he went into hiding.
So, police flood every street in Bensonhurst, which spells trouble for the mob, who all but run the community.
The NYPD started busting down doors of Gambino family card games. Usually it got left alone. Not this time. The heat was on. The detectives wanted somebody to give up this person who shot Yusuf Hawkins.
And as police conduct raids, protesters continue to swarm the area, bringing with them more unwanted attention.
The mafia was out there trying to tell everybody to be cool so the demonstrations could eventually stop and they can go back to business as usual.
Finally, after weeks of chaos, the mafia decides hiding Joey Farmer is bad for business.
People had so much heat on the neighborhood.
Sammy the Bull had a meeting with the people in the neighborhood at his pool hall. And during this meeting, told the kids and some other mob-inclined people that Joey Farmer could be given up, that was okay with him.
These demonstrations had impact, had economic impact, had social impact on that community, and it worked, and they gave him up.
On August 31st, 1989, authorities take Farmer into custody.
Joey Farmer was in upstate New York at that time, and he ended up surrendering to the police. There was no drama.
Joseph Farmer.
Farmer is charged with murder. He pleads not guilty.
Nobody pled out in this case. Everybody went to trial.
But for New York's black citizens, the fight for justice is only beginning. Over the next few months, the politics of race will take center stage, and Yusuf's death will open the door for New York's first black mayor, David Dinkins.
Mayor Dinkins ran on the heels of a rebellion. They ran saying that they were going to get justice for black people, that they were going to clean up the city and get things right.
Hatred. He was an unarmed kid being chased by someone with a gun.
Racism.
That hate and disrespect for black bodies was next level.
They're trying to keep us from telling our story.
Stories will be told. Truth revealed.
I just couldn't imagine losing my 17.
Black people stepping out to the forefront, saying no more. And there was this energy out here, and black leadership during that time galvanized it.
When Yusuf was killed, Ed Koch was the mayor of New York City. And after the death of Yusuf, people were not all that happy with his performance.
This is not a community that should be described as a racist community.
Mayor Koch backed down and said, hey, this is not a racist community. The next day, we the people are out there marching, and they're calling us to our face, threatening us, throwing things.
As protests in Bensonhurst rage on, 8 young men have been arrested for Yusuf Hawkins' murder.
If we look at what occurred that night, the mob chases Yusuf and his friends. There were guys with bats. There were guys with golf clubs. They're at the mercy of this mob. And that's when Joey Fama moves forward and shoots Yusuf. And so all those people with the bats acting in concert with the shooter.
It couldn't have happened without the cooperation of others. So we charged 8 different people with murder.
On April 2nd, 1990, the trial begins for the alleged gunman, Joey Fama.
Joey Fama's story was essentially that he was not the shooter. He didn't say, if that was the case, who the shooter was.
Prosecutors call witnesses to the stand to refute Joey's story, that he wasn't the shooter. Among them is another Bensonhurst teenager named Frankie Ty, but Frankie's testimony comes with risks.
Part of the trial of Joseph Fama relied on testimony from Frankie Ty, who was a young kid who had changed his story on some things, was under psychiatric care. Not a great witness, according to Joey's attorney, but who nonetheless had told the story at the trial of Joey Fama shooting Yusuf Hawkins.
On May 17, 1990, the jury returns a verdict. Fama is found guilty of second-degree murder and sentenced to over 32 years in prison.
One guy that I would never let out of jail. Never. He stole a bar of soap. Give him 5 more years. You know what I mean? Because that one guy ruined so many lives. Ruined so many things.
Keith Mondello, the teen whose ill-fated romance sparked the mob violence, is also tried for murder.
Their suggestion had been, if you didn't have Keith Mondello, you didn't have 35, 40 hyped up young men gathering in a schoolyard with baseball bats and golf clubs. And so Keith was largely blamed for this having occurred at all.
In May 1990, Keith is acquitted of murder, but convicted on a slew of other charges, including riot, unlawful imprisonment, and possession of a weapon. He is sentenced to 5.5 to 16 years in prison, but ultimately serves 8 before being paroled.
The ringleader, the one who brought everybody together, got 8 years. 8 years? People get 8 years for stealing something, not for organizing a lynch mob to kill somebody.
Of the 8 teens brought to trial in Yusuf's murder, only 4 end with convictions.
These were really difficult cases because nobody wanted to cooperate. It was like pulling teeth, having witnesses disappear, having witnesses go hostile on us. So we had a mix of convictions and acquittals.
And though it feels like injustice to many, Yusuf's story continues echoing across the city. In fact, he helped change New York political history.
In 1989, Ed Koch was seeking a 4th term as mayor of New York City. His main primary challenger was David Dinkins, who was African American. So for David Dinkins, he was trying to become the first black mayor in the history of New York City. One of the things that people were saying was, Ed Koch doesn't care about black folks. He's not out there saying this is wrong. Now, David Dinkins wasn't hollering and screaming about Yusuf Hawkins, but he was speaking in a way that resonated with people. He was speaking with compassion and with sympathy.
What I'd like to talk about is how we need to bring our city together.
After defeating Ed Koch in the city's Democratic primary race, David Dinkins won the city's mayoral election in November 1989.
So this is what the legacy of Yusuf Hawkins left. He was great in life. He was a beautiful person in life, but he was even greater in death, that he presented a symbol of assertiveness, a symbol of, I'll go wherever I want to go, a symbol of, in spite of all of this racism, wasn't infected by the disease we're fighting against. I was a good man, and I loved human beings. And for that, we are eternally grateful to the family and the spirit of Yusuf Hawkins. Bensonhurst is different now. I think it's largely Asian and white. Now the Asian community might be larger in Bensonhurst now.
If you go back, it was like these folks were hollering and screaming and yelling, trying to preserve something that was dying anyway. The vast majority of white America did not ascribe to the views that were being expressed by these folks. And if you look at Bensonhurst today, that sentiment is not there anymore. Not there anymore at all.